From the Hype HQ studio in Chicago, Illinois, it's Startup Hype Man, the podcast, Season 12. Hello, everybody. My name is Raj Nation, and I am the founder of Startup Hype Man. I help startups stand apart from their competition and stand out to their audience with storytelling, messaging, and pitches that perform. In this podcast, you'll hear my conversations with startup leaders from around the globe as they share a slice of their company's story. Stories on growth, scale, successes, and failures, all to help you and your company grow up and ultimately stand out. Before we begin today's episode, I'd like to invite you to join the email newsletter that doesn't suck. That's right, if you head to startuphypeman.com and enter your email address, first you'll get my free SaaS masterclass, but you'll also get updates whenever we release new episodes, plus my storytelling tips and advice periodically throughout the month, and helpful resources from Startup Hype Man partners. It's the newsletter that doesn't suck, available at startuphypeman.com. All right, speaking of things that don't suck, let's begin today's episode of Startup Hype Man, the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, making her way to the microphone from Chicago, Illinois, and currently residing in both Miami, Florida and Chicago, Illinois. She is the CCO and co-founder of Deskpass. Please welcome Nicole Vasquez.
Woo! That's the sound of me running.
Bump, bump, bump. Bump, bump, bump. She is Nicole Vasquez. She is the CCO and co-founder of Deskpass. Deskpass lets you, as an entrepreneur, as a freelancer, as a remote worker, get access to all of the best co-working spaces in your city for one monthly cost. So instead of being tied down to one individual spot, or instead of having to take meetings at a Starbucks or any other coffee shop, or have to worry, how can you make that phone call without your cat in the background or your dog barking or having like your kitchen as your backdrop if it's a video call. Deskpass lets you go to the co-working spaces in your city, set up shop for the day, go to different spaces every day of the week if you want, and essentially make yourself feel like a legitimate business. Now, Deskpass has been around for a few years, and in the time since they launched, they have expanded to 19 cities and 475 partner co-working spaces, as well as 700 bookable meeting rooms, private spaces, for example, like conference rooms, podcast studios, etc., bookable by the hour. They have now reached 10 employees. Nicole, with all of that, I just want to say welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and definitely best introduction ever.
Our topic today, which I'm super excited about, especially because I work with several marketplace companies, and I know you've got a lot of experience in this, so I think our listeners are going to get a lot here. The topic today is rapid marketplace expansion. Can you tell us why this is on your mind and why this is important to you?
Well, I mean, you have to keep growing, right, in the beginning. But I mean, when you have a product that can satisfy so many customers across the nation, you have to scale, and it comes down to a strategic approach to that. As a small business owner starting out 6 years ago, I certainly know that you have to continually improve your product and grow and partner up to be able to grow quicker and more efficiently than you could potentially do on your own. And we certainly wouldn't want to be stagnant either.
Now, before we dive into rapid marketplace expansion, let's learn a little bit about Nicole, the person. Now, Nicole, I first met you, I believe, in 2015, and you were running, now for background for everyone, Nicole is like the co-working queen. She has in her life started, operated, and sold one co-working space. She's actually still co-founder of a second co-working space. So I met you back in 2015 when you were running your first space, The Shift.
Yep.
And I remember after leaving that meeting, I turned to Levi, who ultimately became your business partner for the second space. And I remember I turned to him, I was like, I don't think I've ever met anyone who loves co-working as much as Nicole does. So where does that love come from?
I'm glad. You know what? I think that's a good sign that I'm in the right industry, right? Because if you left that meeting and would say, man, that woman is miserable at what she does, I wouldn't still be in it. But I think it comes from my background. I grew up in a multicultural household. I'm half Filipino, half Croatian, and then I grew up going to American schools. So I think I learned from a very young age that there's no one way to do a certain thing, right? There's multiple approaches, but also that the best environments that I thrive in are ones that have varying perspectives and people from all different backgrounds. And so when I fell in love with co-working, I had walked into a co-working space. I looked around and I said, well, there's a group of people in suits, and there's a group of people playing ping pong, and there's a group of there's somebody individually working heads down with headphones on. I said, what is this place? Like, how could all of these people reside and be working in this place? And there was also an energy to it. There was an energy to it unlike other offices that were very siloed and heads down. So the first time I walked into a co-working space, it was 1871 in Chicago. I was there for an event. I turned around and went to the receptionist and I said, what is this? And that's how I learned about co-working. And once I discovered the concept, I was still working for a sales and marketing company at the time. And I spent a year obsessively researching about co-working and knew that I wanted to start a space like this because I said, not only had I tried out the different types of work styles, right? The individual office where you're sitting by departments and you have gray walls and everything's really kind of quiet and boring and very buttoned up. Then the other opposite was that I had tried sales and marketing and I was working out of Starbucks and from my kitchen table office and sometimes working out of my car. And I saw the two extremes of the current types of workplaces, the typical office and then the work from home setup. And I knew that this was the happy medium and this was the way going forward. That would be the best environment for somebody to thrive who has a flexible schedule or works from their computer. And that's how I fell in love. And I'm still very much in love with this co-working concept to this day.
Well, and your intuition there is spot on with just where the general trend of the economy started to head as well. I mean, I think it's obvious that co-working is a thing now, but it was not obvious as recent as 4, 5, 6 years ago.
And all of the numbers, if you look at all the statistics year over year, the amount of remote work continues to grow, which means the amount of co-working spaces will continue to open despite, yes, there's been some things in the news about some of the big players having setbacks, unfortunately, but that's due to their own mismanagement. The actual industry of co-working and remote work is continually year over year rising.
Now, you said before that in that story there, you said that you fell in love with co-working, and what I think is interesting, I just learned this recently through an Instagram post of yours. Fell in love with co-working to the extent that you met your husband through an introduction that came via co-working. Can you just explain that story?
It is real. It is real, people. So if you're sick of the Tinder, Bumble, give another channel a shot. But I hosted the first co-working conference in Chicago a few years ago, and a woman that attended was managing a co-working space. And I said, she's a nice woman. She apparently thought the same about me. We became friends on Facebook, and then a week later, she sent me a text that said, "Hi, ... and said, I thought about you and I would like to introduce you to my soon-to-be brother-in-law. And being newly single, I was like, no. And then 5 minutes later, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go on a blind date. And I went on a blind date, and to this day, she's still in co-working. We actually do business together and our companies are very close, and we have a great friendship as well. And we're now related. So co-working does bring love. And actually, with just this year, we found out that 2 Deskpass members are engaged. And actually, they just recently got married. We just posted about it on our blog. So co-working truly does bring people together, usually professionally, but as humans go, sometimes that can fall into the love category.
There's the new Deskpass slogan. Co-working creates love. And I'll tell you, and the person you're referring to is a woman named Kaylee. And I first met her as well, just I think through being on Deskpass and then going to that co-working space, Novel Co-working at the time. And I just remember, like, she was, I think that's how we met, or maybe we met tangentially before that, but like, she always takes the time to like get to know you. And every time I happen to bump into her, she like will spend 5 minutes with me to catch up. And I'm always just so like appreciative of that. Even when like, I don't know, I feel like I have a million things going on, and I'm sure she does as well. She always is just very cool about like taking time for you and getting to know you. So it's no surprise that she would be the one to introduce you to who would then be her brother-in-law, who would then become your husband.
It's interesting that you bring that up because one, that's also just Kaylee as a person. She is one of the most kindest, considerate hearts, and friendly as well. But in general, co-working space managers, are also referred to as community managers, are very known to be friendly. My joke when I was running my first location for 2 years and I was the person there every single day is that people would come in and before they even sat down and put their stuff down or had a cup of coffee, they would say, "Hey, Nicole," and they would just talk to me for 10 minutes, like almost like a therapy session. And it's because people are coming in every day and they're seeing the same people and they're making connections and having friendships that they want to have, right? And so these community managers, they sit at the front desk or they're walking around throughout the space and seeing the same people every day. It's just like in a regular office, you make friendships. And what's interesting is the joke that I love is that co-working is the coworkers that you actually choose, the coworkers that you like. Because in a regular office, let's say you don't get along with somebody, but you kind of have to smile and make do. In co-working spaces, these people become friends because they actually enjoy each other. And usually the community manager is the heart of that community, which is why they're called community managers, because these co-working spaces are true ecosystems.
And you'll notice when that quality is lacking in a community manager. Because I remember being several years ago, spending about 5 months at a WeWork, and a particular community manager at that location specifically, I remember my business partner, Martin, at the time, always looked at each other. We were like, how does she have this job? She's so cold every time. Yeah,
she doesn't even like being here.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk through now. So our topic today is rapid marketplace expansions. We have your love for co-working down, and that kind of creates the natural transition to then building a technology platform around access to co-working. And that's really what Deskpass is. Can you talk through just how this got started?
Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, my partner, Sam Rosen, who started the first co-working space in Chicago more than a decade ago, he was traveling to New York and he was frustrated because he had to go back to working from a hotel or a coffee shop because although there were, of course, co-working spaces out there, he couldn't become a member for just a day. So he, of course, said, look, remote workers travel a lot. How come I don't have access to co-working spaces in other cities? There's got to be a solution. And then I, at the same time, was running my first location, and I knew that it took people months to finally give co-working a try. I had people coming in and saying, you know what, to be honest, I've been following you and your business for 6 months. I finally came in because I just had to get out of the house. And so what I knew as an owner is that the consumer knowledge about co-working was lacking. And then also once they found out about it, because they hadn't done it before, they were very hesitant to try it. And so it took them a while. So between Sam and I, the issues that we saw, we knew that there needed to be something out there that helped people to find and access the workspaces in their area as well as other areas, which would accelerate the time it took for them to get into the rhythm of co-working and kind of discover the light, right? Find out that the home office and the coffee shop is truly not the best setup for somebody who works remote, but to truly discover these co-working spaces and get into a rhythm and be able to have easy access to them.
Now, with that being the genesis of Deskpass, you've got to then start. You can come up with the idea, but then you got to now acquire actual co-working spaces and get them onto the platform. So, how did you initially acquire these spaces, and what were those conversations like?
So, being a technology company, I won't, of course, deny the fact that we had to build a product, and we had a great team to do that. So of course you have to build the product, but then we had to invite the partner spaces. So in the beginning, it was relying on our network. So Sam and I both had good connections and relationships with other co-working space owners in Chicago, having been owners ourselves, and also being very active in the community.
This was after you had done that conference, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you had access to like literally everyone in Chicago.
Exactly. And I think that speaks to, I think back to the early years of being an entrepreneur. You and I, we were at all the events, right? We were meeting people, you're having coffee. Like, I definitely think that there is, in the beginning, I mean, and you should continue to do that even when you are heads down in a growth stage. But it speaks to how valuable it was in the beginning of building my entrepreneurial career to be going out to these events and to really be interested in other owners and having coffee with them. Because when the time came around for Sam and I to say, hey, we have this idea, we believe it's going to be great, but we need you to sign up for it. For them, it was a risk, right? They're, okay, I have to take 5, 10, 15 minutes, set up this profile. Who knows if anything's going to happen from it? But they liked us. They believed in us. They thought so I think it really speaks to building that reputation. So in the beginning, it was definitely just leveraging our existing relationships and going for the low hanging fruit. Chicago being, we knew a lot of people who were in the co-working industry, and they would give us a shot.
So you were able to pretty much tackle Chicago through the previous connections you had made, which is always a great route to go when that exists. How long did you, I guess let me ask it this way. Did you have in mind, okay, we're going to stay in Chicago, only Chicago, and operate and master the whole process and everything for X number of months or years before we pick city number 2? Or did that next city come organically? And how did you decide where to go next?
We did not have a set in stone plan, like in 6 months or 3 months, we must expand. But there were also considerations like competition. We knew that there was a company doing something somewhat similar. And so you have a worry about getting there first, right? But then also knowing that this is a product that should be scaled. It was getting to the level in Chicago that we felt comfortable that the service we were providing was up to par and running smoothly. And once we got to that level, we knew that it was ready. It was time to go to the next city. And also just continual motion, right? You don't want to be a perfectionist. We all know the lean startup model, and staying too hard and too long in the same market. So then the next one was, that's how do we get to the next one?
Yeah. Well, but I think too, even though you don't want to there's a difference between staying too long because you become a perfectionist versus knowing you have some core principles down or core elements of launching a city or creating interest in a city first before saying, hey, now let's open up the second one. And I think there is that fine line there between hey, everything must be perfect versus nothing is good at all. So let's just go because you can't be perfectionists, right? It's that healthy.
Great point. I completely agree. And we also, at that point, just because we had proven it was working in Chicago, we all know markets vary. It didn't mean that it would be, successful in other cities. And so that was another impetus, right? To continue scaling is, let's make sure this works in Denver and also New York and LA and San Francisco and Austin and all of those places.
So I don't know if you happen to say those in order, just because I can't off the top of your head, or because it actually was in order, but was Denver the second city then?
So again, I kind of thought about this before our chat, the different stages of expansion. And the first stage was the low hanging fruit, right? Relying on our networks and asking for help from people that we knew. The second one, the first few cities were like that. Denver and New York were our second and third. And the reason that we consider them low hanging fruit is because we had good friends in those cities. In Denver, a good friend of ours, Craig Bowdy, who started one of the first working spaces in Denver, also started and continues to run the Denver Co-working Alliance. So he had those similar friendships and network with other owners the same way we did in Chicago. So we approached him. He loved the idea. He believed in the product. We rewarded him for his time, and he made soft introductions for us to other spaces. So it's kind of like going to the top of that network and that hierarchy, or not maybe a hierarchy of that network, and saying, who do we know that can give us some soft intros and vouch for us? Because in these early stages, we didn't have the credibility, but we need to rely on those introductions. And it was the same for New York and also Austin and LA. So we did that with all of those cities. We had a contact on the ground there.
What you just described there is something that I've talked about on previous episodes, which is this concept that I call super connectors, where the super connector is the one, instead of having to individually go to each end customer, you go to someone or some entity at the top who has access to all of your customers or a large base of your customers, where if you can establish a relationship there, either they just put you directly in front of, or they can make introductions, or they can, you become, just embedded in what they're doing in a way that it makes the end user, end customer acquisition, you've cleared that hurdle of how do I even find them? How do I get in front of them, et cetera?
Well, think about it. How we all have advertisements displayed to us all times, right? And it usually takes how many times for us to see that ad to buy something. But then if somebody is a diehard Tim Ferriss listener, when he recommends something, they're buying it immediately. Or you're a health and wellness, fanatic, and you have somebody you follow on Instagram religiously. When they say it, it takes away the 5 times it would take for you to buy it on your own, because they basically are vouching for it.
Yeah. And the key differentiator here, though, is that there's a difference between like what we're calling a super connector versus simply a referral, like from one person to one other person. This is getting access to an entire network from one person, group, or entity. Now, when you were having conversations, so it's one thing to get that referral or get that introduction, but then there is still an effort that has to take place on your end, like, because you got to live up to what they said in the introduction, and you can't show up being like, well, we got the introduction, screw it. Well, so what were those conversations like ultimately with the individual co-working spaces?
So something I always think about, I don't know who said it, but it was a sales thing. It said, if you can speak your customer's language, if you can understand the problems that they're having, the sales process will go that much smoother, right? And so what's interesting is we are owners of co-working spaces ourselves, and these partners of ours, they are also co-working space owners. And so we genuinely understood the problems that they were experiencing, which is the lack of consumer knowledge about co-working and how hard it is to just get people to try co-working, and that advertising themselves, Google AdWords and all that stuff was very expensive, and they didn't have the budgets that, say, a big company like a WeWork had. And so we approached them and said, look, we're owners. We know the struggles that you're having. We have built this model that allows us to do all the work for you. We'll spend our own money in advertising. We'll find and send new people. All you have to do is just agree to host them, our members, when they come in, and then we'll do the rest of the work. And so and then also, because we are owners ourselves, we are not competition with spaces. We're not middlemen. And we built a model that made sure that we did not compete with them in any way. So we built a model that helps them. And so when we explain it to them, it's almost a no-brainer. It's free for them to participate. We pay them for every person we send their way. There's no work on their team. We spend our own advertising, marketing, and then we send new people into their space. And then after the person comes in, if they think they're a good fit, they can follow up with them. So it really helps to come at it from a perspective of what the spaces need, and to have built a model that satisfies that and really promotes them. Like, we would not be in business unless these co-working spaces are in business. And so I feel very comfortable about that.
Can you talk through a little bit more of that concept of it being a no-brainer for them? And I asked that from the perspective of, because in the past, I have explained Deskpass to others, and sometimes, not saying other co-working owners, I'm just saying like people, right? And sometimes, like if they're an entrepreneur, if they're a business person, they're thinking about the business of it, they'll be like, yeah, but wouldn't that just take membership away from the co-working space? Why would they say yes to that? So can you just talk through more about how it is a no-brainer for them?
It's a great point. And that's why I still have a call with every owner. We are finding new sales channels. And so for a space is spent to acquire a new member, they're usually having to do online marketing or some sort of time on their staff or marketing budget to acquire these people. We spend our own money in advertising, and we bring new sales channels. So we do a really good job of casting a wide net and getting people in to learn about co-working and bring them in and get them into the funnel and then have them come into the space. So we're great at that. We're great at lead gen. So, I mean, think about a space. If they don't work with us, they can spend their own time and money to try to acquire their own customers, or they can set up a profile on our platform for free and sit back and let us bring new members in.
One thing I'll say to add to that is, so I am a Deskpass user myself, and I spent, I think, pretty much a full year with a Deskpass membership. And then May of 2019, I decided to get a permanent spot where I am now, which is Blue Lacuna in the Pilsen neighborhood in Chicago. But I did not relinquish, I just downgraded my Deskpass membership to like the light version, because what I still find is that even though I set up base here, I have meetings in other parts of the city where it just doesn't make economical sense either from time economics or even just like Uber or driving or parking economics to go to that meeting and then come all the way back. And then if I have another meeting, go in between. And I really like adamantly hate working out of coffee shops where
Mm-hmm.
that damn like bean roaster like is like, you know, every 3 minutes, and it's, you know, there's music blaring that you don't even like. So where I still find value in it, and why I think it doesn't take away, and if anything, it just adds more people and more exposure to an individual space, is even if you find permanent residency somewhere, even if you have permanent residency somewhere, it still lets you, when you have to be out and about, be professional still. Or, I mean, now that Deskpass is in so many cities, like, funny thing is, when I first signed up with Deskpass, my first use of it was going into Austin, Texas. Like, I happened to like sign up for it and I was going to the Fund conference in Austin that week.
Mm.
And I was like, well, why don't I just use it because I know they're in Austin now, so I'll just go to some co-working spaces before the conference starts, because I was spending time before and after the conference. So it you know, it gives you that flexibility within town, but then also if you got to travel to other spots as well, and not have to worry about where, because it can be a mental burden to just figure out where can I go today if you don't have set, you know, places already there for you. So I'm doing a good job selling Deskpass right now, but I want to. So I speak from the user side, and I do want to touch on the users here. So, you know, I heard about Deskpass because I knew you already. Obviously, I mean, you know a lot of people, but you don't know everyone. So how is Deskpass? How have you been able to get the word out to users and actually get people to sign up for trials or memberships and actually go to these co-working spaces?
So yeah, we've definitely evolved. In the beginning, Deskpass was great for, it is still great for individual workers and small teams. At this point, we're at a place where we have enterprise companies using our platform and putting hundreds of employees on the platform. But in the beginning, you know, when we were in the beginning looking for the individual user, you know, Facebook ads, local ads, but we spoke to the problems that people were feeling, right? Like when you're working from home, you get frustrated, you get distracted. One of our ads is a photo of a sink full of dirty dishes. And I don't even like the photo, but it does really well because it says, like, you know what, I forget, it like talks about how if you work from home and you have that sink full of dirty dishes, like it's bothering you, right? Like, and it's just not a work environment. And so we've done really well with local ads, Facebook ads, because it allows us to convey the message, but also because of the highly targeted location ability. Because if we're in Chicago and, you know, the density of spaces are in a certain area, we certainly don't want to be advertising in Indiana. Now we have a lot of enterprise companies who have demands for their employees to work remotely, and we're reaching out to them. We have a business development person, teammate, and they're also reaching out to us. So I definitely think that our marketing will continue to evolve based on the type of users, since we do have a variety now.
We're going to talk in a second about how you've continued to expand. We talked about stage 1 was low-hanging fruit, and we'll get into stage 2 in a second. Before that, though, I want to let our listeners know about a new partner of the show in Sales Hacker. So if you have listened to this show for a while, and especially over the last few seasons, then you know that I try to feature more B2B startups on the show, or marketplace startups that have a B2B side, for example, Deskpass and Nicole. And Sales Hacker is the world's smartest community for forward-thinking B2B professionals. It is 135,000 members large, and that means whether you are a CEO, the head of sales, the VP of sales, or a sales rep, Sales Hacker has your back with podcasts, articles, webinars, and research from actual sales experts and practitioners, including yours truly, all to help you be better at your job of growing the company. There's no fluff from outside content marketers. You just get the straight dope to grow your sales acumen. I'm a big fan of Sales Hacker, and that's why I'm really excited to have them as a partner of the podcast now. So you can join the Sales Hacker community for free at www.saleshacker.com. Again, you can join Sales Hackers community for free and get access to all those articles, the research, the podcast, the webinars, and more at www.saleshacker.com. Today on the show, we are with Nicole Vasquez, the CCO and co-founder of Deskpass, and we are talking rapid marketplace expansion. To this point, we've talked about how you got off the ground, how you built your initial customer on the co-working side, and then we just came off of how you acquired and have been acquiring users for the platform. You define stage one as the low-hanging fruit. Where did you already have relationships built? At some point as a company grows, those relationships start to run out. They might always still be there to agree, but they start to run out, and you have to start making the more quote unquote cold outreach. So what was stage two like for Deskpass?
Stage two for us was about coverage. So like looking at the map, being in Chicago, New York, LA, and Austin, those I would believe would be under our low hanging fruit, right? We had contacts in those cities. Then you look at the map and you say, okay, well, we have nothing in the Pacific Northwest. We have nothing, the southeast area. And so it came to wanting to have coverage in all parts of the map, because for marketing purposes and also people who travel, making sure that we had coverage in all parts of the nation. And then also being in certain big cities continued to validate our feasibility. And we also gain legitimacy. But being in 2 cities is different than being in 10 cities. And so that stage 2 was all about coverage and confirming that legitimacy and that getting that validation, because at that point we started talking about, having to raise funds and things like that. And so it was the boost that we needed. We needed to build that foundation.
So did it start with like a cold outreach email then?
So yeah, I still to this day do the outreach. So of course I have an assistant that pulls the list of spaces in each city and does some initial research, but ultimately I still email or call or reach out to every space that we invite to join, because we do want to make sure that it's a good fit and that the qualifications are there. But then I still request a phone call. It used to be a meeting when we were not growing as quickly, which I really love because I get to go in and see the space. But now I request a phone call with every single space that we invite to join, just to make sure that they know who we are and our story, because I think that's really important to convey our mission and also to answer their questions, because every single space is unique and I want them to feel heard and understood that we are going to respect and understand their unique community.
I want to just add an anecdote to what you just said there, because it's so important. And I think a lot of companies overlook it, especially in like the growth stage, which is the importance of the personal human touch. I think oftentimes when you're trying to acquire a lot of customers, and a lot of times in the marketplace type of structure, the thought process is, oh, we can like email blast out and put a sign up now button and we'll get a bunch of people interested. And in fact, 2 episodes ago, we had Deepa Kartha from Zinda, and she explained how that was what she thought would work at first and it just didn't. And I can tell you, like, I've been working over the last year with a well-being marketplace company in Melbourne, Australia named Ivana, and their CEO was a guest on this show a few weeks back. And one of the things we worked very closely on in their sales development and their market outreach was the personal touch of the outreach itself. And their biz dev rep, Ben, they also have a similar like no-brainer type of value prop, but it doesn't mean no-brainer to the point that we're not going to use our brains and we're going to just put something in front of you and tell you to sign up, right? It's still a build the relationship with them. Because if you do, and tell me if you're experiencing this as well, because what's happened in Ivana's case is, they personally talk to every practitioner who they onboard onto their platform, and which creates the right, story for them, right? They're able to get across that story. And then the practitioner is bought into them because of the story, and it's less of like, this thing I signed up for, yeah, whatever. And then they also then become advocates on their behalf to other people in the community. Are you finding that as well?
Absolutely. I mean, co-working is already such a personal industry, but look, for me, taking 5 minutes to explain that, hey, I quit my job 6 years ago to start a co-working space, they almost always go, oh, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I'm not selling you. I'm actually coming at this from a perspective of I've been in your shoes. I still am in your shoes being a co-working space owner. And this has worked for us. I've converted members at my own space from Deskpass. And here, and then also just allowing them to tell me, look, I can go to their website and learn all about their memberships and what makes their community unique. But I still, to this day, even though sometimes it could take a lot more than 5 minutes for them to say it, but they're proud of it. I say, tell me about your space, and also tell me what your goals are, because we all know in selling, if you know what they're hoping for and you can deliver that result, it's also a no-brainer, right? So I just say, tell me what you're looking to accomplish. Like, what are your goals? And if they say, look, we really need to fill up these seats, then I explain how we fill up those seats.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, is it typically a one conversation and they're in, or do you find it is a sales cycle that, expands several meetings in 30, 60 days? What does that sales cycle look like?
So thank goodness for a CRM. And it's one of those things that for a long time, first few cities, I think I would use like a spreadsheet and then like set reminders for myself to follow up with someone. And then when I finally switched, my partner Sam was like, oh, do you want to use a CRM I'm using? I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then within like 3 weeks, I was like, why have I not been using this? I mean, it is like I have different columns in my CRM. The first is just outreach. Like, have I reached out to them? And the second one is like, have they responded? But them responding doesn't necessarily mean that we have a call or a meeting scheduled. And and so I set reminders all along the way, and the CRM makes it all automatic, right? It pings me every morning saying, here's the people you have to follow up with, and through every single stage. So I can have spaces have a call with me today and be ready by tonight and email me and say, hey, I did everything, activate my profile. And then I can have spaces that take 6 months to get set up. But thank goodness for a CRM keeping me organized, because, when I'm trying to launch multiple cities at once and have people all along the way in different stages, your brain is not going to be as good as a CRM.
Would you consider that to be then kind of like, oftentimes we talk about creating like a sales playbook. Now the CRM is the technology that helps enact that, but as you expand into your cities and onboard new spaces, is this like a documented process now you've put together, or are you just kind of like intuitive, like, well, I know what to do, so I'll do it?
It should be, and it will be a documented process when I hire the person that eventually, and then it is documented. I mean, within my CRM, if you took a look at it, you would see the different channels, right? Or the cycles of it, the stages, sorry. So somebody could very well understand the progression of events, but when we are at a point where if we need to keep growing, and if we want to grow much quicker than where we're growing, we have to leverage technology and automation. And so the next step, I have to hire a lot this year. I could potentially hire someone else to be doing what I'm doing, but I think it will be a combination of having somebody in the beginning, but then relying on some sort of automation that allows, after that initial conversation, they go through an automation process. And that would be the next stages. But there should always be a strategy and a playbook. Absolutely.
So we've talked about stage 2, and I guess if stage 1 is labeled low hanging fruit, how would you label stage 2?
For me, I had it written down as coverage, coverage and legitimacy. We wanted to have coverage across the nation, but we also wanted to show our legitimacy. I guess that's how I'd say stage 2.
Is there a stage 3?
Oh yes, there's a stage 4. Stage 3 is where we're at now, which I would call strategic partnerships. So we're at a place now where we have enterprise companies saying, look, we have X amount of employees in Raleigh, Durham. And if you can get that open by, within the next month or 2, we will put all of our employees on Deskpass. So this strategic partnerships it's also like strategic opportunity based, right? Because at this point, we've got all the big cities with the density of co-working spaces, and we're going into cities that maybe have 10, 15 or less spaces. And so at this point, it's like, which one do we choose is going to be based on where the opportunity is in terms of partnerships and companies that want to use it.
It's essentially continuing to climb up the ladder of access, right? Where it's like first you went to like the straight contacts who you knew, then you find the super connectors, and now it's like the next level of super connector and also the next expansion of who you serve with this enterprise customer, right? Not just the freelancers not just the freelancers entrepreneurs, but we've got remote workers in this city. We want to give them a place to work.
And what's interesting too is staying true to the model that we built, because look, could I at this point say, hey, it's an open application, any co-working space in any city, just submit your info, create a profile, and now we're nationwide and we'd be in 100 cities, but have maybe one space in each city, each of those cities. There's a reason that we don't do that. There's a reason. I mean, the appeal of Deskpass is for somebody to have instant access to workspaces and meeting rooms in their city throughout their city, right? So, and then also because we don't want to we are very cautious about our relationship with spaces. If we had one space in one city, then potentially somebody could just use Deskpass versus joining that space directly.
Sure,
and so
sure.
we want to be very cautious that by doing that, we don't disrupt
Their own business.
their own business and the value that we're providing, and also our brand image and integrity and all of that stuff. And then just strategically, so there's a reason as well.
Well, that makes me think, do you then, when you go to a new city, do you say we need to have onboarded, say, 10 spaces before we open it up to users?
Yep. Up until the most recent launch, we did not launch it without 10 cities on the platform.
Okay.
Just because we were going to, 10 spaces. Just because we were going into cities that had so many, 30, 40 plus. At the, New York has 60, 70, 80 plus. But, now we're going into cities that maybe have 5, 10, 15. So absolutely, yes. Now, we still launch, when we launched, we flipped the switch, they're up there at the same time, but certainly, yes, when we launched, we used to have a bare minimum just to make sure that we were staying true to the model that we built and the service we were delivering.
I want to ask one more question before we get to our wrap up. And that is, part of this too, as you expand into new markets, it is a software platform. So part of this is product development as well. How have you balanced, and this is something I feel like it's always like the entrepreneur and the engineer's conundrum, which is how much effort do you put towards product versus sales and growth? I'm sure there's some division of labor, but how has Deskpass approached that?
Great question, because Deskpass is a technology company and I oversee everything forward facing. So from communication with our members as well as our partner spaces. So I am not an engineer, and I am blessed to have an incredible team of engineers and designers and everybody who's built this product. And so I hold down the fort in terms of everything forward facing, while my team behind the scenes acts like wizards and just and builds amazing products and continues to roll out amazing improvements. So, in the early stages, it was build a product that people could use, right? What is the base product that allows us to deliver the service? And so our app, our first version of the app, it allowed people to book and see spaces, but of course it was glitchy, it was slow. And we collected feedback that whole time and we had very clear communication. So we built a product that people could use, and it was, and we collected feedback, and then we kept a tally on any cancellation reason as well as all of the suggestions. So in the beginning, it was like, just get it done, right? And in the middle stages was balance, because we knew that we had to build app V2, and we spent a year doing that behind the scenes while still using the first app. And so it was balancing, allocating the dev time to current product, but in the background, having to build an entirely new product that the end user had no idea about and didn't see and was complaining about the bugs. And so it was balancing, because we could, we felt nothing hurts more than having a customer cancel and say, I hate your app, it's too slow, fix it, because we're like, we are fixing it, you just don't know. And so it was that balance, because, on days like that, we wanted to say, stop the wheels, stop developing the new thing, just let's fix this first one. But we had to say, no, we know that, app V2 is gonna, we have to keep focusing on that. So I think the middle stages was all about balance. And now in the growth stage, look, we have a never ending list of features that we want to roll out. We have a roadmap. And so now in the growth stage, it's all about setting quarterly goals and making it very manageable and avoiding distraction. So every quarter we have a big rock that we call it, that we have to accomplish, and the whole team knows about it, right? So every department, everybody knows. And so it allows us, when other things come up, we say, will this distract us from our current goal for this quarter? And then every quarter we choose our new goals based on what the opportunities are. The goals that we had, or what we thought might be a goal for next quarter, already we're realizing maybe that needs to be changed. So when we have our next our Q2 meeting, we're going to figure out what's the most important. So it's all about, at the growth stage, it's all about prioritization.
Yeah.
Like what do we need to do to keep moving?
Well, and I can tell you from the user perspective, and I think I've had Deskpass since 2017 or no, 2018, I think. And when I think probably for a full year, it to me, it appeared to be essentially just like a mobile optimized site that launched through an app icon. And maybe that's, or I think they call it just like a web app, or no, it's not a web app, but it is like a mobile optimized site it launches through the app icon. And it was super buggy. Like every time I went into it, I had to re-log in, right? It logged me out every time I got out. And yeah, it was annoying, but the end reward was, and the end desire was, I need a place to work today. And I think that's part of like, it's going to be different for every company versus like, what do you focus on and when? But in this case, the value of the end result or the end desired result was the ability to do my job that day effectively, right? The ability to work somewhere that I feel comfortable working in. So I anyway was willing to put up with getting logged out and having to log back in, or not loading like the spaces correctly every time, right? So it was not so big of an annoyance that I was saying, I can't use this. And I'm sure you had some people say, I can't use this and cancel, but it sounds like the majority had that same thought process where, again, the end result was a big enough like cookie, carrot, whatever you want to call it, that we could put up with some annoyance along the way or some friction.
Yeah, that's a great point, because look, if while we were building the new app, if the first app crashed, of course we're going to stop, hold the horses and focus on fixing that first version that people are currently using, because otherwise they don't get their end result. So I agree. Like, yeah.
Right. And it's different than like, for example, ordering food, where pretty much the entire experience lives within the app, except the food getting brought to you at the end. Deskpass is like the portal that gets you to where, like, to the end, like, which is still you going somewhere. Right. And if you compare the two, me walking or riding or whatever, or going somewhere, still is way more effort than having to re-log in and find my space.
Yeah.
So again, it's that like the amount of friction relative to the larger customer experience. How do those compare? And that's, I think, and I have zero UX background. This is just how my brain is thinking about it. I think that's potentially a good way from the user side to be looking at it, or from the developer side, like how much will someone put up with and when can you afford to focus on features versus growth. To wrap up, can you let our listeners know where they can find Deskpass? Can they trial it? And where can they get in touch with you?
We're on all platforms. So, Deskpass, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Also our website, go to deskpass.com. Everybody can get a free trial when they first sign up. So go on and get it. And then me personally, you can find me on Instagram, Nicole Renee V on Instagram.
Renee with 2 E's, correct?
With 2 E's, yep.
I think all Renee. Well, I guess technically 3 E's because it's E-N-E-E. But
oh, yeah. Good point. I didn't think about that, but I know what you're saying.
With an accent mark on the second E.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up, we'll go and each give our top 1 or 2 lessons or takeaways for the listeners based on the discussion today. I'll start and I'll toss it to you. The topic today was rapid marketplace expansion. What I found to be one of the most valuable things that you shared was this notion of keeping, as you scale, don't lose the human touch. It may have to be modified in a certain way, but you don't automate people if you don't have to, and don't automate connection if you don't have to. Nicole, top 1 or 2 takeaways for the listeners?
Follow the opportunity. So leverage your own network and go for that low-hanging fruit to get you off the ground or to keep moving. And then also, it's a continual evolution. A company continually evolves. So make sure that you don't get stuck on your original idea and think that that's gonna, save the world. Keep evolving. And then just because I'm an organized person, but like organization is key, not just in your own work, but across your team. So making sure that you're having weekly, quarterly, daily check-ins with your team, however works best, but make sure that everybody is on the same page, even if they are doing vastly different work.
My final question for you before I let you go, fill in the blank. Entrepreneurship is blank.
I have to just say my initial thoughts are a few different words. It's exciting, anxiety-inducing, fulfilling, and a lifestyle. Because I remember growing up, my dad is a physician, and I always thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then one day I went, like in school, we were learning about the body and the health, and I saw like blood, and I freaked out. And I came home and I said, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't think I want to be a doctor." And I was really upset because I told him for years that I was going to be a doctor, and he just looked at me and said, "I completely don't worry about it. It is a lifestyle. Like, you have to love this
blood.
This yeah, you have to love blood." And I just remember that it released me. And now I realize, like, look, I love what I do, but it is a lifestyle. And so make sure that you have signed up for this wild ride.
She is Nicole Vasquez. She is the Chief Community Officer and co-founder of Deskpass. Nicole, thank you for joining us today on Startup Hype Man, the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Woohoo! My exit music.
That concludes this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, you can share this episode with a friend, or you can leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page. When you do that, it boosts us in the search results, and ultimately that means more entrepreneurs will listen, which means we share the message, we spread the mission, and support more entrepreneurs at the end of the day. You don't have to stop with the podcast if you want more, and if you are interested in telling your company's story better across your demo calls to investors and to any audience you seek, well then why not have a conversation with me? Head to startuphypeman.com, fill out a form there, and let's talk. If you've got recommendations for future guests for the show, or you want to be a guest on the show yourself, email media@startuphypeman.com. That'll tie a bow on this one. Thank you again to this week's guest for joining. I am Raj Nation. You have been listening to Startup Hype Man, the podcast. We will see you next time. Hype Man out, word up, raise up.
Got you howling at the moon, yeah. This a dance with the devil, girl. Instead of sundown too, yeah. This a dance with the devil, girl. Tell me what you gonna do, this a dance with the devil, girl. And if you can't get it loose, then fall into the truth. It got you howling at the moon, yeah. This a dance with the devil, girl. Instead of sundown, yeah. This a dance with the devil, girl. Tell me what you gonna do, this a dance with the devil, girl. And if you can't get it loose, then it's a dance with the devil.